Recording is on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga for All this morning. And our focus this month of January 2021 has been finding balance. So we are going to speak a lot about our body's center of gravity today, and we will be balancing quite a bit. If you need a chair or access to a wall to give you a little bit of extra assistance and balance, that would be great. I also am going to focus a little bit on shoulders. So the balance between the fronts and backs of the shoulders in terms of strengthening and stretching, lengthening and flexibility. So I have my yoga mat, I have my block, strap, and maybe a blanket as well if we need that for a little bit of padding. So I'd like for you to just come to a stand and we'll focus on our balance and just see how you're feeling today with balance. So eyes open just to begin. Take a nice shoulder roll up, back, and down. And then turn your palms forward. So this position standing up in physiological terms, kinesiology terms, is called the anatomical position. So when we're standing nice and tall, each and every one of us has our center of gravity. And that's different for everybody because we're all of different heights and weights, and our weight is distributed different ways in our body. But it's roughly located right in the center of the belly, just below the navel, or in the second sacral vertebrae behind in our spine, where our center of gravity is. That center of gravity pulls us down into the earth and helps us to stabilize. Anytime we move our body, our center of gravity changes. So it's not a stable action, it's always moving and it's very dynamic. Now, our stability in our center of gravity also depends on what we call our base of support. So if I have my legs a little wider, I'm going to feel more stable because I have a wider base of support, and my center of gravity is distributed right in the center of that base of support. If I bring my feet really close together, the base of support is smaller, so I feel a little bit more tippy side to side, front and back. So I'd like for you to either stand feet close together or slightly separated. And then let's just, if you feel okay with this, close your eyes, but you can keep them open if you feel a little tippy. And I want you to take your center of gravity and move it forward. So I'm not bending at the waist or tipping forward. I'm taking my whole body forward slightly, and you'll feel the weight come into your toes. And notice right off the bat, your toes are going to start to grip to help you keep your balance as you tip your center of gravity forward. Now shift your center of gravity back. And notice that feels like we don't go back as far because we don't have toes on the back of our heels to grip. So it's a little bit more difficult to tighten through the base of support or through your feet to keep your center of gravity. And then bring your center of gravity to your right side. And again, we're not side bending, but we're just taking the whole body center of gravity to the right. And now you'll feel your right leg is a little bit more responsible for your base of support. And then we'll take that over to your left. You'll feel more weight distribution to your left leg. And then try to find exact center. Okay, where is that for you, where you feel that center of gravity is going right down into the earth? So what affects our balance is moving out of the center of gravity. So if I bend my head down, it's going to cause my center of gravity to shift forward. And I'm not stable over my base of support. So I want you to think about when you're walking outside, going for a walk, I want you to try to keep your upper body over your base of support and not look down at the ground, because that's going to cause you to tip forward and maybe lose your balance. Same thing in today's balance poses. Try not to look down at the floor because that's moved your center of gravity away. I want you to lift, shoulders over hips, nice center of gravity, and try to look straight ahead. The ground is down there. You don't need to worry about it, but try to keep your center of gravity balanced over your base of support. So let's take a nice big deep breath in, sweep the arms out and up. Exhale, press the palms together and bend your knees and sit into chair pose. So you'll notice that your base of support is still right here in the midsection, but your butt is back and your chest and head are slightly forward. So you're finding a balanced distribution between the upper and lower body to keep your center of gravity secure. If I bend over too far, now my upper body is going forward, my base of support is reduced. If I sit my hips back too far and don't drop my chest, I'm going to fall backward. So we find that beautiful distribution of upper and lower body to maintain our balance in chair pose. And then we'll move in and out of chair. Sweep the arms up, press palms, and sink. Now, if you have your feet wider apart, you've increased your base of support, you've widened it, and that you feel that stability as you sink into your chair. To challenge yourself is to bring your feet really close together, knees touching, small base of support, a little bit more challenging for balance. So these are things you can think about as you do your yoga poses to feel a little bit more secure in your balance and in your center of gravity today. One more. Inhale, exhale, and hold. Now, what if we were to reduce the base of support in our feet? So with feet either tight together or hips distance apart, try elevating your heels up and setting them down. You may need to have a chair to hold on to or a wall, but I want you to try to lift up into the balls of the feet and set those heels down. Now, if that's a little bit too much of a challenge for you today, you can try just, woo, there she goes. Try lifting up one heel and then down, and the other side and down. Notice where you're looking. Try not to look down at the floor because, again, that interferes with the body's center of gravity. And it also takes us out of that beautiful alignment and form in our pose. Just a couple more, either both heels or one at a time. Abs are in, shoulders are down, and then rise up back to the anatomical position. Now, notice the length between the fronts of your shoulders and the backs of your shoulders. Ideally, that should be equal. So if you had a measuring tape, this distance between the front of the right and left shoulder should match the distance between the back. And over time, we start to round in here. So this distance shortens and the back distance increases. So pull those shoulder blades back and think about that nice balance of length between the fronts of the shoulders and the backs of the shoulders. Nice and long through the spine. 2 more breaths. And 1 more breath. And exhale. So each pose today that we're doing standing, I want you to think about that length in the fronts of the shoulders. We'll step our right foot back, turn the toes out just slightly into warrior 1. I want to talk about base of support here in warrior 1. If you feel out of balance, it might be because you have your left foot behind the right and you're tipping, or your toes are too parallel. So we can try increasing our base of support by turning the back foot out just a little more and stepping the feet a little wider. So they're maybe even a little wider than hips distance. And wow, that feels really strong. We can also spread our toes apart a little bit to increase our base of support here. Now find that length in the fronts of the shoulders, gentle engagement of the shoulder blades, holding our warrior one. And a nice little chest expansion here. Bring the arms up to goalpost. The elbows are slightly below the shoulders, and squeeze the shoulder blades to open up through the chest and pull the belly in. And I want you to notice where your base of support is. It's equally distributed from that second sacral vertebrae right down into the floor. And notice if you drop your head, you come out of that center of gravity, or if you arch your back too much. And not that that's a bad thing, but when you really want to focus on balance and stability, you're going to keep your body's center of gravity maintained over your base of support. Let's take one more breath here. Nice and active through your shoulders. And exhale. Bring your arms down. Lift up. Press the palms back at heart center. Take the back foot forward into your standing mountain. And then the front foot steps back to find your warrior one. Now again, we're not standing like we're on a balance beam because that's going to be really tippy. So your back foot can be turned out a little more to help for your balance. And your front foot can walk out so we have a nice wide base of support. Toes are nice and spread. Hips are squared forward. Head, chin, chest, belly, all squared down into that center of gravity. And let's take a different chest expansion here, either bringing hands to your hips, pulling shoulder blades back, or we can interlace hands or grab our strap behind us and extend the chest open. We need to do these chest expansions every single day because of the amount of time we spend seated at our computers. So much more now, even in the pandemic, we're doing so much online and virtually. So give yourself a chance to stretch every single day through the chest, through the shoulders. Let's take one more breath here. Notice your base of support and your center of gravity. And exhale completely and release. Step that back foot back together. And we'll come into tree pose. So standing balance, we're going to be on one foot. So what has it done? It's reduced our base of support. So we're going to spread our toes and really ground and root down into the floor on the right leg. And we pick up the left. We're just going to turn our knee out to the side. And your foot can still be tapped to the floor. It can come up to your lower leg, up to your inner thigh. Just caution you to stay away from your knee joint. So if we have our hands in at heart center, we've made our body a little bit more compact. So our center of gravity is really grounded into that belly sacral area. But as soon as we take our hands either out or up, or especially if we take them slightly over to one side of the body or the other, our center of gravity is going to change. So I want you to just play with your tree pose, and it doesn't have to be completely stable and secure. I want you to play and notice if I change this, what does it do to my center of gravity? If I look down, whoop, if I look up, where does my gravity or where does my balance start to shift? And what are those muscles that we feel in our lower leg and our foot as they respond to those changes in our center of gravity? Now, do we notice this space between the chest, the shoulders in the front? Sometimes when our hands are at heart center, we round forward. So maybe we're here, pulling those shoulder blades together and opening through the chest. One more breath. And exhale and step out of your tree pose. Ooh, now what do you feel in your right ankle in your lower leg, maybe in your hip. Yeah, maybe a little burn. Those muscles have been working isometrically, holding that contraction. Let's move to the left side. Increase your base of support by spreading your toes a little bit. Sometimes if we have a shoe on, it helps us with our balance because the sole of the shoe increases our base of support. So it's really good to try to do some of these poses barefoot so we can challenge our base of support. Now notice your center of gravity and start to play with that center of gravity as you maybe move arms. What would happen if you looked over your right shoulder, and over your left? Our vision has a lot to do with our center of gravity. That's why in yoga we call it the drishti, or the focal point, where we can just look at a stationary object and it'll help us to balance. It just really assists with what we call our proprioception. If we move that vision, then our balance will change. Let's take a couple more breaths here. Feeling that left ankle, that left lower leg really firing and working. And then come out of the pose and notice what you're feeling in that left ankle, lower leg, and our hips. Let's take a nice big deep breath in, stretch up, exhale and swan dive down into forward fold. And I'm going to come to the top of my mat here. And then just step back to all fours, hands and knees. If you need some padding for your knees, you can take your blanket or fold your yoga mat a little bit for some cushioning. So what happens to all fours base of support? Now, notably, we don't typically have our hands together and our knees together when we're in all fours. We always try to be shoulders width apart with the hands and hips width apart with the knees. But if we feel like we're having a hard time in spinal balance, we can slightly widen the hands just a little wider and the knees a little bit. So we've created a little bit wider base of support. And then you start to flow through cat and cow to mobilize your spine and to check in with the lower back. And we're feeling some strengthening here in the triceps, in the forearms, in the shoulders, providing some flexibility for the spine and the back. And one more, breathe in, cow, lengthen. Breathe out, cat. And then come to a neutral spine. So when we have 4 points of connection onto the mat, our base of support is great. We feel pretty secure. But as soon as we take the right hand away from the mat, it's like taking one leg off of a table. It's going to fall over. Mm-hmm. So we are not falling over because we're connecting with our core and we are compensating for that limb that's no longer in connection with the mat. I just want you to feel your abs working here. Sometimes we do spinal balance without really understanding what's going on in our body, without feeling that connection of the abdominals. Just take one more breath. And then exhale, set your right hand back down. Make sure your base of support is solid. And just lift your left hand forward off the mat. So in order not to fall over to the left side, we're using our right arm a little bit more for that base of support and really distributing into both knees. But you might notice a little bit more usage of your left leg here. It's the opposite of the hand that's on the floor. And that contralateral position of our body really strengthens the core and the lower back. Let's bring that left hand down. You've got 4 points of connection. Just take your right leg simply back behind you. And we try to do this without letting our hip elevate because that moves our center of gravity over the left knee, We still want the center of gravity pointing right down into the earth, the hips nice and level. And you may feel more intensity in your right arm than your left. And that's that contralateral balance. So that's correct. It'd be very easy then to slide your left hand off the mat and to reach it forward. Now, why do we not do contralateral raise with our right hand and our right leg lifted off the floor? It would be like taking two legs of a table off on the same side. It's falling over. But maybe if you had opposite legs of a table on, it might actually stand up on its own. Let's bring the hands and the knee down. And if your wrists are bothering you, you can come up on your knuckles to make fists for wrists. And then we'll just take the left leg back only and try not to lift your hip. You should have immediately felt a little bit more work in your left hand. And then once you feel balanced, take your right arm up and just hold spinal balance. And we're just observing, maybe we've done this 1,000 times, but I want you to do it today with new eyes and with a new experience as to what's happening in your body in spinal balance. And why this contralateral balance is so good for our core and for our entire spinal alignment. And then let's bring the hand and the knee down. Just find a nice child's pose to relax through your shoulders and your wrists. Breathing in and out through the nose. And then we'll come back up. Coming into a downward facing dog, let's tuck the toes, lift the hips, and rise up, pressing into the heels. I just want you to also think here about your base of support. So sometimes I see down dog done with the feet really close together, and it's not like it's an issue. There's nothing wrong with that. But we kind of reduce our base of support. So if you look at your feet, they should be at about hips distance apart is that ideal place, but you can widen them a little more to actually increase the base of support. Same thing with your arms. They can come out a little bit wider. Now we feel nice and strong and secure and solid. Now our base of support is slightly back, or our center of gravity slightly back more over the feet than the hands. So we don't want our center of gravity to be forward over our hands in a down dog. And sometimes that's the problem. And then we feel a lot of stress in our wrists. So take your center of gravity and move it back. You're almost trying to set your hips over your feet in a way. So there's less and less stress on your wrists, on your shoulders. Fingers are spread nice and wide, toes are spread. And we'll hold here 3 more breaths, lengthening the backs of the legs. Just balancing nice and stable. 2 more breaths. Exhale. 1 more. And then lower those knees back down to the mat. Take a child's pose stretch. So we are going to work on either supported warrior 3 or supported half moon. So your chair is a nice tool to use to help you with your balance or your block. So I'm going to bring my block up to the front of my mat, and I'm going to put it at its highest position. If you have 2 blocks, that's even better. So we will come back to downward facing dog, and then just take a step forward with your right foot, and then bring that block underneath your right hand and lift up into warrior 3. Now, when I'm in warrior 3, if I put the block right in front of my foot, it's like I'm on a balance beam and I don't have a very good base of support here. So I want to take my block and move it out to the side a fair amount so I have a wider base of support on the floor. You can also place your hands up on a chair, and we're looking for squaring off the pelvis here in Warrior 3. It's a closed hip position. Notice where your center of gravity is, and it's almost directly over your foot, but your upper body's a lot heavier than this leg that's behind you. So you might feel like you're tipping forward. So if you're having trouble, you can lift your chest up a little bit so your center of gravity comes back just a little further. And that standing leg is really working. If you want to try letting go of the block and holding your balance, you can release it. We'll just hold a couple more breaths. As soon as that standing leg starts to fatigue, the balance really goes. One more breath. And then you can either step the back foot forward into forward bend or step back to a down dog to switch legs. So I'm going to step back with my right foot a little bit, bring my block underneath this left hand, and it's not in front of the foot. It's out to the side. And then find that nice solid base of support as we lift the back leg off the floor. Now, to know whether or not your hips are square, you can take a little peek back and see if you can see your back foot. It should be pointing down. If we turn it out and rotate it, our hip is definitely going to lift. So turn your toes down, drop that hip. Notice where your center of gravity is. Try to place it over your base of support. Now, our base of support changes if we're using our block. If we use our block, we have a bigger base of support, but as soon as we take our hand away, the base of support is just the foot that's on the floor. So that's how we modify these balance poses, by giving us a bigger base of support. Ooh, okay, one more breath here. Feeling that work in the standing hip. And then we'll release and either step forward into forward bend or come down to a child's pose if that's feeling better for you to take that right now. We can also come up to a stand and just shake out the legs a little bit and check in and see how you're feeling. So a progression from our Warrior 3 is to move into half moon. And the only difference really is it's an open hip pose instead of a closed hip pose, and we are stacking our hips instead of squaring them to the floor. So let's have our right foot on the ground, our right hand on our block or up onto our chair or wall, and we'll come back into our Warrior 3 where we were before. Now, if you don't want to go into half moon, you're going to work on Warrior 3 one more time. With half moon, we take this hip and we rotate it so our belly is facing the other wall instead of the floor. And we try to stack our hips and stack our shoulders. This is a wonderful pose to do up against a wall because we can feel the wall behind us. Top arm can reach. We can place it at the hip, wherever you'd like, and notice where your base of support is. Sometimes this pose actually is more solid because we're stacked more over our standing leg. Your drishti or your gaze can be down to the floor, or more challenging is to look up to the ceiling or up to that top hand. Let's take one more breath here. Finding balance. And then we slowly come down and then lower that back leg either to forward fold or you can push back down dog or child's pose. Taking a couple of breaths. Half moon is a challenging pose. So it's a journey to find that balance in this pose. Let's try it on the other side. So our left foot's in front, right foot is back. We get that block into a nice secure place, kind of on a little diagonal on our mat. We can lift the back leg up and then start to turn the pelvis And we're trying to get the right hip to stack up on top of the left. It might not happen, but wherever you can go with it today, and then rotate your shoulders to try to stack. Now I have much better luck with this if I keep looking down at the floor. I see a little round circle on my mat, and I'm just looking, breathing, finding that base of support over the standing leg. Good. This is my easier side to balance on. My left leg's a little easier, so you might notice differences from one side to the other. Let's take 1 or 2 more breaths here. And then come back to center and back to your forward bend. We'll step back to hands and knees and child's pose. Now, almost every pose that we do has a progression. Probably everyone does. And what would be the progression for a half moon? Doing it from the knees, which is basically a kneeling plank. So let's come up, and with our kneeling plank, we'll bring the right knee forward and turn your ankle out a little bit so it's to the side of your mat, and place your right hand in pretty direct alignment with that knee, and then we rotate and stack the hip. So if you're having trouble with half moon, this is where you try and you work on this. And then this leg lifts and the arm reaches. It is the exact same pose. What did we change? Well, we have the knee and the whole lower leg on the floor, so we have a really nice base of support here. So we feel more secure, more solid in this pose, and we can really work on stacking the pelvis, stacking the shoulders, and feeling confident in this balance pose. Let's take 1 more breath here in our kneeling plank. And then we can lower the leg down and lower the arm down. Repeating on the other side, the left knee is forward and we have our ankle rotated out. That increases our base of support. If we keep our knee and ankle in the same alignment, it's going to be like that balance beam concept. Square the hand underneath the shoulder, open out. We're stacking this top hip, so try not to roll it forward. We really want to open, reach up, top leg can lift. And this is your kneeling half moon pose. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful way to work up to be able to do this from a stand confidently with a good base of support and a good center of gravity. Notice where that base of support is and where your center of gravity is. 1 more breath. And that foot lowers down and the arms come back down. Let's come back to child's pose just briefly. We've been working on balancing today in planks, working on core stabilization the month of January. So we've been on our hands a little bit, so I'd like to bring us down to our forearms. Coming down onto the elbows, you can either place your palms flat or clasp your hands together. And then walk your legs back behind you into a kneeling plank, or tuck your toes under and lift up into a full plank from the toes. All right, let's go 90 seconds today. Ooh, that sounds like a long time, but the stronger we get, we're able to stabilize for longer and longer periods of time and have that endurance in our core. So if you're up on the toes and 90 seconds is too much, your knees can drop down. If you're on your knees and 90 seconds is too much, let your hips drop down, just take a little bit of a break. Or if your shoulders are bothering you, and then come back up whenever you're ready. And let's see, I've got a clock in front of me. I have 1 minute to go. If you feel like you're really strong and solid and you'd like another little extra challenge, you can try reducing your base of support by picking 1 foot up off the floor. You can also do that from your knees. 1 foot up off the floor just for a couple of breaths, maybe 10 seconds. And then setting it down and lifting the other leg up off the floor. Now we have a reduced base of support, about 10 seconds. And let's see, we are down to 20 seconds remaining in our 90-second plank. Ooh, we're getting stronger and stronger in 2021. Breathing in, breathing out, 10 seconds. Feel your core working. Shoulder stabilization. 3, 2, 1. Drop those knees. Now let's come into Sphinx pose. So elongate your thighs. Let your pelvis come to the floor, and you can separate your hands if they were clasped. Now this is just a little bit of a supported back bend. But if your back is feeling it's pinching here, take your hands and slide them forward a little more, and this is going to drop your chest lower down to the floor. So we don't have to really arch the back a lot if that's bothering the low back. Now I'd like to have your core slightly engaged. So imagine there's a little thumbtack right underneath the front of your pelvis, and try to lift up off that thumbtack just a little bit. So that's engaging through the core. Glutes are slightly contracted. Legs are really active. Now, if you have a pretty flexible spine and you'd like to go a little further, we can come into seal. So we take the hands to the top corners of our mat and nice spread fingers for a good solid base of support, and then press into those hands and come up in the amount into your seal. Shoulders are down. Core is still zipped up, and we're breathing. 3 breaths. And exhale. 2 breaths. And exhale. 1 more. And if you're in seal, bring those elbows back down. And if you're in Sphinx, slide the hands back underneath of the shoulders so your spine comes a little bit more to neutral. And then use the strength of your hands to press yourself up. Tuck your knees underneath you a little bit more into a nice cat stretch. The tailbone rounds underneath. And this is a counter stretch for the back bend we just did. It's typical in yoga to find balance in our poses by adding that little counter stretch so that we bring everything back to our neutral. 2 more breaths. And last one. And relax. Okay, come into a comfortable seat, and you might need your yoga strap here as we stretch our shoulders. Just comfortable position, simple cross leg or legs out in front of you, or you could do this actually sitting in a chair if you have that and you've been using it for your balance. So what I want to do is find a length in my strap, or if you're not using one, you can just hold your arms out, that I can bring my arms up and around behind me. Sometimes we refer to this as shoulder threading, but we're just doing an arm circle up, back, and around. But the nice thing about doing this is as we build some flexibility in our shoulders and we stretch, we can bring our hands a little bit closer together on the strap. And whenever you do this, start on the conservative side first. Try not to put your hands too close together and then all of a sudden do this and strain anything in your shoulders. You can always come in a little closer as time goes. So be patient with yourself. If you're not using the strap, you're just lifting your arms up, circling them behind you, and then circling them back the other direction. And we'll do one more. Now, each one of us has a different spot where we feel the most stretch. And it's kind of like, ooh, that's where I feel the tightest. So as you go around this last time, I want you to think, okay, this is feeling pretty good. It's feeling tighter, tighter, tighter. Right there for me is the most. Now, I don't want you to feel any pain, just a stretch. I don't even want to use the word discomfort because I just want you to feel a stretch. If it's too much, bring your hands a little wider and let's hold. Just about 10 more seconds. You can bail sooner if it's feeling uncomfortable in your shoulders. And one more breath. And exhale, bring those arms back over. Good. So that's working through shoulder extension and hyperextension, shoulder flexion. So we want to work in rotation of the shoulder now. So if we take this right or left arm on your side, rotate it and bring it behind your back. So I'm inwardly rotating this shoulder. Give it a little pull and hold there. You feel that stretch right around the shoulder. And then tip your head away from that arm that we're stretching. So I want you to elongate the side of your neck and then slightly look down. So we're adding rotation of the neck, lateral flexion of the neck, and inward rotation of the shoulder. One more breath. And exhale, bring your head back to neutral and release that left arm. Just notice how it's feeling. Make sure it feels all right. Maybe a couple shoulder rolls. And then take your right arm, inwardly rotate the shoulders. So the palm is facing back. Bring the arm behind you. And I'm just using my other hand to pull it over and give it a little bit of assisted stretch here. The head tips towards the left shoulder with the ear, and then rotate your head, looking down. Now I'm mirroring you, so even though you're doing your right, this is my left, and this side feels really easy where the other one was super tight. And that's pretty common if you're right arm dominant, that the right side is tighter and more tense than your left, because we just use it more in everyday life. All right, let's bring that head back to neutral. Now working in external rotation of the shoulder, I want you to bring your arms forward and just pull back. So it's like I'm putting the backs of my hands on the wall behind me and just doing this active stretch. Now we could do this up against a wall. We could put our arm, press it against the wall and turn away, which is a nice way to stretch here. We're just going to do this actively by using the muscles of the upper back, and we feel the entire chest stretching, broadening through that part of your shoulders. One more breath. And exhale, bring the arms up a little higher. And now we're rotating the hands back behind us. So this whole arm bone is rotating back. Your flexibility might not be just like mine. So I don't want you to look and go, oh, I must be doing it wrong, because that's not the way I'm looking. So whatever your range of motion is great for you here. Just a couple more breaths. Elbows slightly below the level of the shoulders. And then release it down. Roll the shoulders a couple of times, up, back, and down. So coming onto your mat, I'd like you to lay on your right side. And we are going to do a nice rainbow pose with the arms and shoulders. So laying on your right side, on that right shoulder, See, I'm going to actually use my blanket for a little pillow. If you've got a pillow, you can set it right underneath your head, and that way you won't need to use your neck muscles here. So the knees are stacked, the hands are stacked, and this top hand is going to stay touching the floor as you draw a rainbow over your head, and then start to open up and see if you can get your arms completely out without leaving the floor. Tighter than I thought today. So we're going to go through this range of motion several times slowly. The hand makes that rainbow back over. And I want you to start thinking about where is the tightest spot for you as you're coming around. Now I could go further if I let my hips come up, but that's not the intention. We want to keep our hips down and our knees down and just see how far we can come out with the arm. Now this time I want you to find the spot that feels the tightest and stay there. As long as you don't have any pain, about 10 seconds. And 3, 2, and 1. Rotate it back over and just relax that arm. While we're here, I'd like to stretch this top quadricep today. So hug your knee in close towards you and grab hold of your ankle. Now, if it's difficult for you to hold your ankle in this stretch, you can take your yoga strap and loop it around your foot and then start to bring your leg back. And we'll start to feel the top of the leg stretching. And slightly squeeze the buttock of that side, tighten it, and try to pull your knee back a little further. So the quadricep and the hip flexor are very well connected here. So it's not all about being able to touch your heel to your butt, because if you're just here, you're not going to feel the stretch. So the heel can be a fair distance away from the glute, but we want to pull the knee back. And that lengthens that whole attachment from the hip flexor along the front of the thigh to the knee. And one more breath here. And exhale. Good. Now you can either just roll yourself over, or if you want to stay facing your computer, you can just flip your body completely to the other side. And we'll do our rainbow stretch. So we're laying now onto the left side. Relax your head, stack your shoulders, your hips, your knees. And then with that arm, the top arm, start to create a circle above the head and see how far you can rotate open. This side is better. I can stay grounded the whole time. And that's because for me, it's my left shoulder, which is more flexible than my right. I'm right hand dominant. So we'll do this a couple more times slowly. Keeping your knees together. If you can also place a block between your knees. That would be nice and helpful. Okay, on this last one, I want you to find where you're tightest and hold. Just about 10 seconds here. Try not to hold your breath. Relax everything. 5, 4, 3, 2,
10 minutes.
And roll back to your side.
Please close the door.
And we'll reach for that left ankle, it's your right ankle, and pull it back. And again, we'll slightly squeeze our glute muscle to draw the knee back. This creates what we call reciprocal inhibition. So if we tighten one muscle, the opposing muscle on the other side of the joint has to relax to allow for that contraction. So we're contracting our glute to allow for the relaxation of our quadricep and our hip flexor. And one more breath. And then restack the knees, releasing the ankle. And then we'll roll onto our back. A pillow if you'd like for comfort. And we'll gently stretch through the external rotators with a figure 4 stretch. Crossing one ankle over the top of the thigh. Let those knees come up in toward you and hold. You can also roll over and take a pigeon pose if you like, or do this pose seated in a chair. And this will help to stretch those muscles that help to stabilize us in our balance poses today. Both ankles are flexed. One more breath. And exhale, lowering down to switch. If our focus today was on hip openers, we would hold this pose a lot longer. But today we're just readjusting the length of the muscles after the work was done. So a little bit more of a therapeutic stretch. And one more breath here. And lower down, uncross the ankle, and bring yourself up back to a comfortable seat, either rolling up or roll to your side. You can use a cushion to sit on if you'd like. So coming up nice and tall, find your base of support in your sitting bones. So we're going to ground those into the earth. And with the side bend today, I want you to keep your sitting bones down onto the floor and not changing your center of gravity. So right hand comes down beside you, left arm reaches, and then side bend without lifting your left sit bone off the floor. So we could come farther if we leaned over onto the right hip. But for today, I want you to focus on base of support and center of gravity. Now try to roll the shoulder open so we're not curving it forward. But if it's hard for you to reach your arm up, you can have it down low. Side bend your body without using your arm. You can even have it folded across the chest. And then we'll inhale to come back up. Notice the base of support in your sitting bones. Reach the right arm up and side stretch without lifting your right hip up. Make sure this arm feels comfortable. The arm up does increase our stretch though, but it's not necessary to add flexion of the spine to lift your arm. You can do that without your arm up. One more breath. And exhale to come down. Let's bring our hands to the top of our knees. We're going to finish today with Nadi Shodhana, or what's called alternating nostril breath. So if you have a few more minutes to stay with me for this breathing pattern, it's beautiful to learn it. It's very meditative. You're going to take your dominant hand. So I'm facing you, it looks like the left side, but I actually have my right hand. We are going to take your peace fingers and place them right at your third eye center, right above the center of your eyebrows. Take your thumb and close off one nostril gently, and your middle finger, or the ring finger closing off the other nostril. Now open up the left side nostril and take a breath in. Close it off and breathe out through your right nostril. Breathe in through your right nostril. Close it off. Breathe out through your left nostril. In through the left. Out through the right. In through the right. Out through the left. In left. Out right. In right. Out left. 2 more rounds of the breath. In left. Out right. In right. Out left. 1 more. In left. Out right. In right. And finish out left. And relax your hand to your thighs and breathe normally. Now just notice if there's any changes or effects to this breathing, pranayama practice, anything you might feel differently in your body. It's wonderful for bringing us into homeostasis, into balancing our right and left hemisphere of our brain, in balancing our nervous system. We'll take 2 more normal breaths. And then blink your eyes open. Press palms at the heart center. Just noticing once more your base of support, your center of gravity, and your drishti, your focal point in your gaze. It has been my honor to teach you this morning. The light, the love, and peace that resides within me honors the light, love, and peace in each of you. Namaste. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you learned a lot today and a lot this month about balance. And I'll shut off our recording. If there's anybody that wants to give me some feedback or just say hello, that would be fantastic.